They say Cappadocia is a place where the earth meets the sky, where fairytale chimneys reach out like hands, trying to catch the stars. But for me, it started not with the sky, but with a sound. The sound of soft footsteps echoing through a cobblestone alley and the faint rhythm of a heart that felt familiar. My name is Elif Kaya, and I never believed in past lives. I believed in clay, glass and color, in the weight of a mosaic tile, in the heat of a kiln, in the quiet moments when art speaks before the artist does. Love. That was the kind of dream you kept folded like a handkerchief in your pocket, maybe there, maybe not. It was early April when I first saw him. Cappadocia sky was still cool, the wind brushing the wildflowers awake, and the town was slowly filling with tourists for the annual balloon and lantern festival. I had just set up my mosaic stall in the open-air market, arranging my handmade designs beneath a canopy of hanging lights. The morning sun poured like honey over the rooftops. That's when he walked by. He wasn't like the tourists. He had the stillness of someone who belonged, yet carried himself like he didn't. Tall, lean, camera slung over his shoulder, and eyes that really paused on my art. He didn't say a word, just snapped a photo, then another, before quietly moving on. I should have been annoyed. People always thought handmade work was public property. But instead, something tugged at me. A thread, a whisper. That night, as I cleaned up and walked home through the stone alleyways of Grim, I kept thinking about him. The stranger with the camera. The next morning, I woke to a flurry of messages from friends. Elif, your mosaic is viral. Check this photo on Insta at Emiragan posted your work. Isn't that your stall? I froze. The name, Emir Akgn, a famous Turkish photographer, known for capturing forgotten corners of Anatolia, the son of acclaimed writer Kemal Akgn. He had disappeared from the media 2 years ago after his mother died. I clicked the link. There it was, my mosaic of a whirling dervish, backlit by the morning sun, with the caption, "In Cappadocia, some stories are told in silence." Tens of thousands of likes, hundreds of comments, and a comment from someone I didn't expect. Her name is Elif Kaya. Her art speaks to the soul. I was stunned. He knew my name. Later that afternoon, I saw him again. I was sketching in the back corner of a quiet CAF when he walked in, ordered a Turkish tea, and sat near the window with his notebook. This time, I watched him. He looked different up close. Older than I first thought, maybe 30 or so. There was something in his expression that seemed burdened, as if each photo he took was carrying more than just light. I debated approaching him. My friends would have dragged me over already, but I wasn't bold like them. Instead, I gathered my things and slipped out only for my sketchbook to fall with a loud thud onto the tiled floor. He picked it up before I could. Our fingers touched. Just for a second. He looked at the drawing on the open page. A hot air balloon floating between fairy chimneys. "You sketched this?" he asked. I nodded. He smiled faintly. "It feels like a memory I forgot I had." Those words, they hit something in me, some door I didn't know existed. "My name's Emir," he added, extending his hand. "Elif," I said quietly, and just like that, it began. Over the next few days, we kept running into each other. In small galleries, on the walking trails between the caves, at the market. It didn't feel like coincidence. He would ask questions about my mosaics. I'd ask about his photos. We talked about Istanbul, about childhood shaped by the Bosphorus breeze, about the silence in cemeteries and the noise in dreams. But there was something else. An undercurrent we couldn't name. One evening, as the sky turned lavender and the lanterns began to rise, he turned to me and said, "Do you believe in past lives, Elif?" I laughed nervously. "No, not really." "Do you?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Lately," he said, "I've been dreaming of a girl in old clothes, her hair in a braid, standing on this hill in Cappadocia. She turns, but I never see her face. I always wake up before I do." I froze, because I'd been dreaming the exact same thing, except in mine, I was the girl. There's a stillness in Cappadocia at dusk that feels ancient, like the air itself is holding its breath, listening to whispers from centuries ago. After Emir confessed his dream, the girl, the braid, the hill, I didn't know what to say. It felt too surreal, too fragile. Like if I spoke, the magic would vanish. But I couldn't lie. "I've had the same dream," I told him. He blinked. "Exactly the same, except I am the girl. I always stand on the edge of a cliff just before sunset, the wind in my face, waiting, and I feel like someone is supposed to arrive. Someone I've waited for lifetimes." He didn't laugh. He didn't mock me. He just said, "Maybe that's why I came back." The next day, we hiked to a place called Love Valley. It's known for its bizarre stone formations, but also for the silence it holds. You can hear your thoughts echo there. Or perhaps your memories. Emir brought his camera, but barely used it. "I feel like I've seen this before," he said, eyes scanning the horizon. He knelt to tie his boot and uncovered something half buried in the dirt. A rusted metal locket round, with an etched tulip on the front. Turkish script inside. "Kemal ve Leyla, 1915. He looked up at me, stunned. "Leyla," he whispered. "That's the name I always hear in my dream." Just before I wake, my skin prickled. He opened the locket. Inside was a faded photograph. A woman with sharp eyes, hair braided to one side. A man in a soldier's uniform beside her. She looked almost exactly like me and him, a thinner version of Emir. We stared at each other, speechless. "You don't think," I began. "I don't know what I think," he said, voice barely a whisper. "But this is something." That evening, we went to Emir's father's house. Kemal Akgn had passed away 2 years ago, leaving behind a study full of old letters, books, and photographs. Emir hadn't touched most of it since, but that night he opened the attic for the first time. Dust danced in the flashlight's beam. The floor creaked beneath our steps. He pulled out a small wooden box, labeled Gallipoli 1915. Inside, a diary, yellowed, bound in leather. "I think this belonged to my great-grandfather," Emir murmured. We sat cross-legged on the floor and began to read. "March 1915. Her name is Leyla. She sells rugs in the green market. She laughs like the wind moves through glass. I met her once, and already my soul is not my own. April 1915. The army calls me to Anakale. I told Leyla we would marry when I returned. She held my hand and said she would wait by the edge of the hill every sunset until I came home. May 1915. The battle is endless. But each night, I dream of the valley, of her braid, the smell of jasmine. I must survive. I must return." Then, June 1915. The letter I sent was returned unopened. They say Grimm was raided. She is gone. And with her, so is my soul. The final entry. "If there is another life, Leyla, I will find you. Even if the sky forgets our names, I won't." I closed the diary with trembling Hands.it was too much to be coincidence. That night, we walked through the lantern-lit streets in silence. My heart was a storm. He finally said, "Do you think we're them?" "I don't know," I replied. "But if we are, maybe this is our second chance." In the days that followed, we visited every historical site in Cappadocia that had any connection to 1915. We met local historians, searched old maps, traced letters and photos. Everything pointed to two real people, Kemal and Leyla, a soldier and a weaver. Their story lost in the chaos of war, but somehow it had found its way back to us. One evening, Emir took me to the very cliff from our shared dream. The wind blew through my hair as I looked out at the valley below, the sun bleeding into the sky just like in every dream I'd ever had. "Do you feel it?" he asked, standing beside me. I nodded. "It's like a page finally turning." He took my hand, and in that moment, the world around us blurred. I wasn't Elif. He wasn't Emir. We were Leyla and Kemal, two souls, once lost to time, now breathing again in a new century. But fate is never that simple. Not in stories that span lifetimes, just when we began to believe in forever reality. An email. An offer. Emir had been chosen to lead a global photography exhibition in Paris, his dream job. 3 years. Full sponsorship. Unmissable, and I had been accepted into a mosaic artist residency in Venice. 2 separate paths, thousands of miles apart. I stared at the acceptance letter. The date conflicted with the Lantern Festival. Our festival, the very place we were supposed to rewrite history. They say when you're at a crossroads, the universe goes quiet. The wind stills. The birds stop singing. Even the sun seems to wait, holding its breath to see what you'll choose. That's how it felt after I received the residency offer from Venice. And Emir, his email from Paris. Both were opportunities we had dreamed of. Both were paths we had worked so hard to carve. But we had never imagined that they would come. Now, not when we had just found each other. Not when the ghosts of our past lives were finally at peace. The question echoed between us like a drumbeat. Do we choose love or destiny? We didn't talk for 3 days. He stayed in his father's house, immersed in sorting old photographs and letters. I kept to my studio, breaking colored glass and rearranging it, again and again, trying to make sense of the patterns, as if they could answer the ache in my chest. On the 4th day, I sent him a note through the local tea boy. Just 5 words. "Meet me at the hill." I waited. The wind was fierce that evening. The valley below was bathed in gold. The sky above already carried the lanterns of early festival goers, rising like prayers. Then I heard his footsteps. Emir stood beside me, his hair tousled, his eyes tired. "I thought you might not come," I said softly. "I wasn't sure if I should," he replied. Neither of us smiled. The silence was thick-charged. "I don't want to stop you," I said. "Paris is everything you've worked for, and Venice is yours," he said. "It would be selfish to ask you to stay." I looked at him, then really looked. The man who had haunted my dreams. The man who held a piece of me even before I knew his name. "Then what do we do?" He hesitated, then pulled something from his coat pocket. "A letter. I found this yesterday," he said, tucked inside the pages of the diary. He handed it to me. The paper was thin, worn by time, but the ink had held dots here. "Oh, the future, if it ever finds us. If you are reading this, then perhaps the sky has been kind. My name is Kemal, and once I loved a woman named Leyla with every heartbeat. War took me from her. Time separated us. But I believe, I know, Love travels through lifetimes. If we ever meet again, in different skin, under different skies, I hope we choose each other. Kayak, I read it twice, then once more, as tears blurred the words. I didn't know he wrote this, Emir said, but somehow, it feels like he wrote it for us. I folded the letter gently, placed it against my chest. We were given a second chance, I whispered, and we're about to throw it away. Later that night, we sat at the base of a fairy chimney, lanterns flickering above us, and tried to write a plan. Could we do both? Could we chase our dreams and not lose each other? The truth was, we didn't know, but something had changed. This wasn't just about Leyla and Kemal anymore. This was about Elif and Emir, about the here and now. On the night of the Lantern Festival, I stood among hundreds of people in the main square. The air was electric. Children held glowing orbs. Lovers whispered wishes into the wind. And then, as the countdown began, I saw him, Emir, across the crowd, a lantern in his hands. Looking straight at me, we approached each other slowly, like something sacred was about to happen. Are you going to Paris? I asked. He nodded. And you? I leave for Venice in 2 weeks. We stared at each other. There should have been goodbye. But instead, we each lit a lantern. Mine had 4 words written across it. This time, don't wait. His had 5. This time, I'll find you. We let them go together. They rose side by side, lifting into the Cappadocia sky just like they had, perhaps, 100 years ago. As we watched them disappear, Emir took my hand. This isn't the end, he said. It's just another beginning. I leaned into him. I'll find you in Venice, or you'll find me in Paris. He smiled then, a rare smile that reached all the way to the sadness in his eyes. We're not Kemal and Leyla anymore, I said. No, he agreed. But we carry them. And this time, maybe we get to write the ending. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet ache in your chest, a pull toward a city thousands of miles away, a whisper that echoes through phone calls, through letters, through dreams that still haven't stopped. That was how it felt, being apart from Emir. He left for Paris 3 days after the festival. I watched his taxi disappear around the bend of the stone road, and I didn't cry. Not then. I had promised myself I wouldn't. But when I walked back to the stall, where we'd first met under that morning sun, the weight of his absence hit me like the Anatolian wind in winter. He was gone. But not truly, because he had left pieces of himself in everything. In the way I looked at sunsets, in the melody of the wind, in the tea we always drank together at PM shop. My residency in Venice began 2 weeks later. The city was breathtaking. A different kind of magic from Cappadocia water instead of dust, gondolas instead of chimneys, opera in the streets instead of folk songs echoing through caves. But even in the midst of beauty, I missed him. We wrote letters, yes, old-fashioned letters. Emir insisted on it. There's something eternal about ink, he once said. Something a text message could never hold. He sent me photographs too. Street corners in Montmartre. Sunlight falling through stained glass at Notre Dame. A pigeon sitting on his windowsill with a feather strangely shaped like a tulip. I replied with sketches of narrow Venetian bridges, of glass-blown trinkets that reminded me of the mosaics back home, and sometimes quietly, shyly drawings of him. We called every Sunday. No matter the time zones, no matter the chaos, but no call could replace the warmth of presence. No letter could soften the sting of 1,000 kilometers. 3 months passed. Then 6. Then 9. We were still together technically. Still writing. Still loving. But something had begun to shift. Sometimes the silences between our letters grew longer. Sometimes his calls would come a day late. My shoot ran over. He'd say, I fell asleep in the editing studio. Sometimes I wouldn't send a drawing. Too tired, too frustrated, and yet neither of us said the words we feared most. Until the day I saw the photo. I wasn't looking for it. It was tagged by a mutual friend. There he was, Emir, in a Parisian gallery, standing beside a striking woman, tall, elegant, her hand on his shoulder, both laughing. Something twisted in my chest. It wasn't the jealousy. It was the uncertainty. I didn't know what we were anymore. As or I did something I never thought I'd do. I didn't call him that Sunday, and he didn't call me either. A week passed, then 2, then a month. The silence was louder than any war drum, louder than the wind between the ferry chimneys. And then, one morning in Venice, as I prepared for the final exhibition of my residency, I found something beneath my pillow, a letter. And a return address. Just my name, Elif, written in Emir's familiar hand. I opened it with trembling fingers. My dearest Elif, if time is cruel, it's only because it forces us to choose between two kinds of beauty, love and purpose. I thought I could hold both. But I was wrong. I lost you in the spaces between calendars and camera lenses. And I know that now. But every photograph I take feels empty without your eyes seeing it. Every street I walk down feels too quiet without your voice describing the colors. You remember the letter Kemal wrote to Leyla? If the sky forgets our names, I won't. Well, I haven't. I still see you in everything. And if I could choose again, I'd choose you. I'm coming to Venice. If I'm not too late. Emir, I didn't know what to feel. Joy, fear, guilt, hope. All of it churned inside me like a storm rolling across the Aegean. Was this our second chance again? Or had too much time passed? The night of my exhibition arrived. I dressed simply. White linen, hair in a loose braid. No makeup except for the red tulip pin Emir had once found in Cappadocia, now fastened to my dress. The gallery was full. People walked past my mosaics, admiring the patterns, asking questions. But my eyes kept drifting to the entrance. Hour after hour. And Emir. By the time the crowd began to thin, my heart had begun to accept it. He wasn't coming, and maybe that was the end of our story after all. But just as I turned to leave, I heard it, a voice. Breathless, soft, Elif. I turned around, and there he was, standing at the door, hair windblown, holding a crumpled bouquet of lavender and a camera around his neck. I missed your exhibit, he said. But I couldn't miss you. My knees almost gave out. I thought you forgot, I whispered. I tried, he said. But you're unforgettable. I smiled, eyes flooding, and then, without hesitation, I walked straight into his arms. Have you ever hugged someone and felt time pause? Not slow down pause, like the universe itself is holding its breath, watching two people try again? That's what it felt like when Emir held me that night. As if the noise, the art, the footsteps, the whispers, all of Venice had taken a step back to let us exist in our little bubble of something lost and now found. He smelled of cold wind and lavender. His heart was racing like mine. I thought I lost you, I said. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. No, we just got misplaced. We walked along the canal in silence after that. No words needed. We were side by side again, like the threads of our woven Turkish rug, finally aligned after being tangled for too long. He told me everything, how the woman in the photo was just a gallery assistant, how the silence between us had scared him, how he had almost convinced himself that we were better off as a beautiful memory than a complicated present. But then I read Kemal's letter again, he said, and I remembered. We weren't meant to be perfect, just meant. I nodded, tears rolling down without permission. He stopped walking and turned to face me, gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Elif, he whispered, can I come back to you? Not just for a day or a visit or a letter, but for real. I didn't hesitate. Not this time. Yes, I said. And somewhere, I imagined Leyla smiling. The next few weeks were a dream. We rented a tiny apartment in Venice's Cannaregio district, nothing fancy. Cracked walls, a creaky wooden floor, and a window that faced a crooked bridge where musicians played every evening. But it was ours. We built a rhythm. Mornings filled with coffee and laughter. Days spent on separate pursuits, Emir photographing Venice's secrets, me completing my mosaic commissions, and nights tangled in stories, dreams, memories, and new beginnings. Sometimes we talk about the past, Kemal and Leyla, how their story might have ended, and every time Emir would say they didn't get a happy ending, but maybe we were born to give it to them. One afternoon, Emir surprised me with ferry tickets. To where? I asked. Back home. He said with a smile. Cappadocia. I booked us a balloon ride. I laughed. Are you trying to fulfill the glitch? Absolutely. We returned to Cappadocia on the first warm week of spring. The market smelled of cinnamon and clay. The same CAF still stood on the corner. My mosaic stall, now run by a kind cousin, had grown twice its size, but everything felt smaller somehow, softer, as if the land itself had been waiting. And that night, we went up in the balloon. The sky was endless. Below us, fairy chimneys stood like sentinels. The wind carried distant songs. The horizon turned gold, then purple, then indigo. And as the lanterns began to rise from the valley below, Emir pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small velvet pouch, inside, a ring, handcrafted, gold with a tiny tulip engraving. I found it in Paris, he said. It was just sitting in an antique shop window, and it reminded me of you, of us, of Leyla and Kemal too. I couldn't speak. Elif Kaya, he said, voice shaking, will you write the rest of this story with me? Not in letters, not in dreams, but in life, in moments, in mornings and in messes. Tears blurred the stars. Yes, I whispered. The balloon drifted gently in the wind, and above the land that had once torn two lovers apart, love found its way back. The next day, we visited the same hill from our dreams. We stood hand in hand as the wind brushed against our faces. I imagined the echoes of Kemal and Leyla around us, maybe laughing, maybe crying, maybe dancing barefoot. Through time, we did it, I whispered. Emir smiled. No, he said. You did it. You waited again. And this time, I came back. Love is not a straight line. It's a mosaic, broken, colorful, uncertain. Every piece jagged, yet essential. Together, they form something whole, something beautiful. That's what life with Emir became. After we returned from Cappadocia, we moved back to Istanbul, the city that raised us, the city that had always been in the background of our story. It was strange how familiar it felt, even after so much time away. We rented a modest flat in Kuzgunkuk, by the Bosphorus, the kind of neighborhood where neighbors still share simit, and cats outnumber people. Every morning, we had tea on the balcony, watching the ferries move like slow dancers across the water. Every evening, We worked side by side, me with my mosaics, Emir with his camera and editing software. We had different rhythms. I was quiet, methodical. He was restless, intense. But like any good art, the contrast made the final piece richer. Our apartment slowly filled with the past, not just ours. We framed a copy of Kemal's letter and hung it in the hallway. We placed the old tulip locket beside the entryway mirror, and every month, on the 15th, we lit a candle by the window. For them, Emir would say, and for the love that never got to live out its days, we never forgot. But we didn't let the past control us either. We were writing forward. Still, like any couple, we had our storms. The first big fight came 6 months into Istanbul life. A missed anniversary, a forgotten deadline, a comment made in frustration. You're so in your own world sometimes, I snapped. And you bury your head in work to avoid anything emotional, he shot back. We didn't speak for 2 days. But on the 3rd day, he left a note beside my tea. Even when we fall apart, I still choose you. Every time, I forgave him. And he forgave me. That's what love becomes, less about perfection, more about persistence. Opportunities kept coming. Emir's photography exhibition toured Tokyo, Amsterdam, and Milan. I was invited to host a mosaic workshop in Granada, Spain. We traveled when we could, separately when we had to, but we always came back home, back to us, and every time we returned, we brought something new: spices, stories, sketches, laughter. Our apartment became a museum of who we were becoming. Then came the letter, not from the past, from a publishing house in Ankara. They had read an online blog Emir posted about our connection to Kemal and Leyla. They wanted to publish it, a photo essay memoir, Whispers of Cappadocia. They called it Dotty first. We were hesitant. It felt too intimate, too sacred to share. But one night, I remembered something I'd once told Emir on a rainy afternoon in Venice. Maybe we aren't just rewriting our ending. Maybe we're giving voice to everyone who never got to finish their story. So we said yes, and 6 months later, the book hit shelves. It sold more copies than we ever expected. Not because of marketing, not because of fame, but because people saw themselves in it. In the waiting, in the lust, in the hope. On the night of the book's release in Istanbul, Emir gave a speech. He stood before a small crowd, friends, artists, strangers, and held the tulip locket in his palm. He looked at me and said, "If love can survive a century, a war and silence, then it can survive anything." I cried, quietly, as I always do, and afterward, we stood hand in hand as the sun dipped behind the Bosphorus. Later that night, in our apartment filled with candlelight and old Turkish folk music, he turned to me. "Have you ever wondered," he asked, "if Kemal and Leyla are still watching us?" "Sometimes," I whispered, "but I think they're resting now." He smiled. Maybe their story didn't need a perfect ending, just a continuation. I nodded, and we became that. There's something magical about circles. No beginning, no end, only continuation, flow, return. That's what our life became. A circle woven with color, love, quiet mornings, late night arguments, travel, creation, and always return. 3 years passed like the breeze that rushes through the fairy chimneys of Cappadocia, soft, persistent, and full of stories. By now, Whispers of Cappadocia had become more than just a book. Schools asked to include it in literature courses. Couples left tulips at old monuments in Greece. Tourists hiked to Leyla's Hill, as the locals had renamed it, hoping for love and answers. But more than anything, it became a movement, a reminder that some love stories never die, that some souls are simply bound. Then came a spring that changed everything again. I found out I was pregnant. I'll never forget the moment. I was sitting on our balcony, sipping tea, sketching a pattern for a client's fountain mosaic. The scent of blooming jasmine filled the air. I'd been feeling of 4 weeks fatigue, strange cravings, unexpected tears at commercials. A test confirmed it. When Emir came home, I just handed it to him. No speech, no build-up, just truth. He looked at the test, then at me, then at the sky, and he laughed, one of those deep, shocked, joyous laughs that makes your ribs shake. A baby, he said softly. We're bringing someone new into this world. I nodded, crying, but not from fear, from something bigger, something ancient. As if the story wasn't just about us anymore. Pregnancy grounded me in a way I never expected. I took a break from work. We decorated the nursery with soft colors and floating hot air balloon mobiles. Emir crafted a photo series titled Becoming, each picture capturing the quiet transformation of our lives. And in those months, I often thought about Leyla. Did she ever dream of children? Did Kemal imagine a future that never came? It felt on some spiritual level that I was finishing what she never could, that I was living her dream and mine. On a rainy November morning, our daughter was born. We named her Emiran. It means peaceful in Kurdish and also holds the meaning of princess in some ancient Turkish dialects. She came into the world with a full head of dark hair and eyes that seemed to knowing for a newborn. Emir held her fast. She's already memorized, he whispered. Like I've seen her before. I believed him, because I had felt the same thing. Life with a child is chaos and magic, and mess all at once. Sleep was a myth, diapers endless, but the joy unmatched. Miran grew quickly. She laughed at shadows, danced before she walked. Her first word was tulip, and every time we held her, we felt the weight and wonder of how far we had come. From strangers in Cappadocia to a family by the Bosphorus. From past lives to this one. From broken to whole. When Miran turned 1, we made a decision. We returned to Greem. To the hill. To the valley that started everything. This time, we brought her with us. We climbed just before sunset, the same way we always had. And there, on the hilltop, we spread out a blanket and let Miran toddle across the grass. She giggled, chasing shadows. Emir set up his camera, same old model, now weathered with age, and I opened a new mosaic kit, letting her press her tiny fingers into soft clay. That night, we lit 3 lanterns, one for Leyla and Kemal, one for Emir and Elif, and one for Miran. We released them into the sky together, and as they rose, something in the air shifted, a warmth, a hush. As if the past, present, and future had finally braided together, and the circle, at last, had closed. Some stories are written in ink. Ours was written in wind, in stone, in sky. In every place we wandered, in every silence we survived. Myron's laughter became the new heartbeat of our home. She grew fast, like the tulips in early April, delicate yet defiant. Every time she ran toward the sea or reached for the moon, it felt like the universe whispering, "Look what love built." But what surprised me the most wasn't how much she changed us. It was how much she reminded me of Leyla, the way she hummed, without knowing it, the way she looked into the distance as if remembering something she couldn't possibly know. Sometimes, I'd catch Emir staring at her with a strange kind of awe. "You think she's..." I once began. He shook his head, smiling. I don't know, he said. But I think she carries pieces of all the women who came before her. And I think she's here to write her own story, not finish ours. One day, when she was 4, we walked through the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul. Miran tugged at my sleeve and pointed to a corner stall that sold antique jewelry. There, she said. That necklace. It used to be mine. Emir and I exchanged glances. It was a simple chain with a tulip-shaped pendant. Handmade, slightly tarnished, forgotten among the flashier ornaments. We bought it, and from that day on, she never took it off. We kept building life slowly. No rush, no grand plans, just one mosaic, one photo, one memory at a time. We traveled across Turkey, with Miran visiting Irans, Antalya, the Black Sea coast. Everywhere we went, people asked about us, about our story. So we told it, piece by piece, sometimes to strangers in CAFS, sometimes to young lovers on ferries, sometimes to old women in village gardens who just nodded and said, yes. Some hearts find each other again, even if it takes a century. When Miran turned 7, she asked me, Mama, who were Leyla and Kemal? I smiled. She had overheard the names for years, but never asked directly. So I told her about the mosaic girl and the soldier boy, about the promise to wait on a hill, about the war, the letters, the silence, and the dream that found its way into another life. She listened, without interrupting, eyes wide, and when I finished, she said something I'll never forget. Maybe they didn't get their ending, so we gave them ours. I couldn't speak, only held her tight as tears blurred my vision. She had understood something most adults never could. Years passed. The seasons cycled. The winds changed. We got older, not dramatically, just in the way people do. Emir's hair grayed around the edges. My hands got a little slower with each mosaic. But our love, it aged like the stones of Cappadocia, stronger. With time, weathered by storms, but never broken, and through it all, we kept returning to that hill. Every spring. To remember. To promise again. To remind ourselves what it means to be chosen not once, but again and again. And then, on a quiet spring morning after years of peace and love and full hearts, Emir passed away in his sleep. No pain. No struggle, just silence and stillness, like the wind holding its breath one last time. The grief came in waves, but not the violent kind, more like the sea at dusk, gentle, wide, endless. I mourned him by walking the streets we loved, by sitting on our old balcony, drinking tea with 2 cups even when only one was used, by telling Miran more and more about the boy who saw her before she was even born. And one day, I returned to the hill, alone, for the first time in years. I brought a lantern, wrote his name on it, lit it, and let it go. As it rose, I whispered, "Thank you for finding me." Again, years passed. Slowly, sweetly, Miran grew into a woman before my eyes, curious, creative, grounded, but with that same dreamy fire in her eyes, the kind that had once lived in mine. And Leyla's, she studied art history in Ankara, then traveled the world just like her father did. Everywhere she went, she carried a camera in one hand, a sketchbook in the other, and that tulip necklace still tight around her neck. And though she carved her own path, she never stopped returning to Cappadocia every spring, just like we had. Just like I did now. The hill had become hers too. I was older now, slower, softer. My hands no longer created the way they once did. My knees ached on long walks. The light in my eyes flickered, but had not gone out, and still, every year, on the same date, I returned to the cliffside above Greem, the place where a dream became a memory. then a life, then a legacy. But now, I didn't go alone. Miran joined me, and eventually, so did her daughter, a little girl named Leyla. One spring evening, the three of us stood on the hill. Miran, tall and radiant, holding a tulip lantern. Little Leyla, clutching my hand, her curls wild in the breeze. "Why do we light lanterns, Grandma?" she asked, blinking up at me. I knelt slowly, brushing hair from her face. "We light them," I said, "to remember love, and to remind the sky of stories it must never forget." She stared up, wide-eyed. "Did I live in the sky before I came here?" I smiled through tears. "Maybe you did. Maybe we all did." As the lanterns rose, one for Kemal and Leyla, one for Emir and Elif, and one for Miran, and the life she was building, I felt something shift in the wind. Not pain, not grief, peace. The kind of peace that comes when every thread of your story has been seen, touched, honored, and maybe that's all we ever truly want. To be remembered, to be known. That night, I sat down to write one last letter, a new one, a different one, not from the past, but to the future. To whoever finds this, maybe you're standing where I once stood, wondering if a love like this is possible. It is, but it doesn't arrive with fireworks or certainty. It comes like wind. It lingers. It whispers. It waits. And if you're patient, if you listen closely, it will find you. I was Elif Kaya. I was also Leyla, once. And in every lifetime, I loved a man who found me, no matter how far I drifted. Don't give up on love. It's waiting for you too. And now, here we are. Years, lives, lifetimes later. And still, the hill stands. The sky waits. The wind listens. And somewhere, two lanterns rise side by side. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, spread love.